Hi, and welcome to an episode of the JetRails podcast. I'm Robert, your host, and today we're going to be going back through actually how we started, and we're going to be talking about Magento and its current state, and more importantly, the future of Magento. With me today, we've got a great guest. We have Maier from the Maier team, and he's really highly focused in the industry, like so many of our guests, on Magento and other ecosystems that really service open source e-commerce. And with no further ado, Maier, would you do the honor of introducing yourself?
Sure. Hey, Robert. I'm Maier Bianchi from Maier. We're an e-commerce solutions agency based in New York City and founded in 2014.
Awesome. And I always love to ask, how'd the agency get its name?
So the name Maier means be one who enlightens, and we're all about empowering merchants to make great business decisions and avoid pitfalls that they can, hopefully make them succeed with a little less pain and friction in their journey, and also come out smarter from what they're doing.
Good. Well, hopefully we'll shine some enlightenment through this episode today. So yeah, you'll keep me on track with that. Now, so thinking of it, even from how I just introduced you a few moments ago, you're best known for your work in the Magento ecosystem, but, JetRails partners with other platforms as well. And, while we're best known for our Magento work, and it's certainly a majority of what we do, what other platforms have you been looking at? What are you seeing overall in the open source landscape? I think it's fair for the audience to kind of level set with, with the fact that we all, do or don't in the industry work with other platforms, or really, have our our feet in other places as well.
Sure. So, like our company has kind of a global ideology. And so we support major e-commerce platforms. Additional ones besides Magento are BigCommerce. We're a certified partner. We also support Shopware. We're getting into that, working on enterprise partnership there as they make an entrance to the US market. And additionally, we fully support Shopify and Shopify Plus. And a little thing about SaaS platforms, where BigCommerce paints themselves as the open SaaS. So ability to do some more intense customizations. And for us, it's all about the right use case for the right merchants at the right time.
Yeah, and that's how I've always felt about it from my agency days forward, that, like anything else in life, these aren't one size fits all solutions. So, it's always about figuring that out, and the playing field evolves. So, when we think about Magento, a lot of us started with Magento 1, of course, and by the time that Magento 1 hit end of life, it felt like a very mature product. The thing worked. It didn't require a ton of heavy patching and things. Things were released, but that was mostly having to do with other dependent technologies changing, new versions of PHP, things like that. How would you consider Magento 2 today? Right now, we're in the Magento 2.4 family. We're at 2.3. They're about to release 2.4 before we know it. 2.4.4, excuse me. How do you see the 2.4 branch that we're living with right now? So 2.4.3 and the upcoming 2.4.4. Have we hit stability?
I would say it's definitely more stable than it has been. I think because the nature of Magento 2 has been to change so much over the major versions, that it didn't find itself landing in as much of a stable place as 1.9 did, because there's always been major platform shifts amongst the version changes. And so I would say while 2.4.3 is the fastest, supports the latest versions of PHP, and therefore you're getting better performance, stability really comes from stability of feature set. And because the platform is still defining what it's going to be, I would say that it's still a challenge to keep up in terms of, staying current on every little change. And so I would say that it's an interesting time to be a Magento merchant, where you're also getting more out of every release. So it gives you more to react to. So I'd say, yes, it's a heck of a lot more stable than earlier versions, but at the same time, always fraught with new challenges. So it's a very interesting time to be a Magento merchant.
Well, and at the same time, e-commerce is evolving at a different pace. That the table stakes to really, be able to grow and scale today are different than I think that they were in some of those earlier days. So, it's almost no surprise that the stack updates, although, that's not to take away from the fact that the first years of Magento 2 were awful. So it really did take time to get through that really rough 2.0 and 2.1 trying to stabilize and so on and so forth,
Exactly.
to get to where we are today. Uh, you know, when a lot of us started with Magento, of course, the e-commerce landscape was very different. The types of merchants that were signing on to Magento were really, it was everyone. It was, mom and pops. It was, B2B, B2C, D2C, whatever acronyms I could throw out there. It was every size business from startups, and the sky was the limit. Where do you see the alignment for Magento today? Whether we're talking Magento open source or Adobe Commerce, what are the table stakes to really be looking at it? Who does it align with today?
So I think Magento is really great for businesses that require more flexibility and want to customize things to be their way and have specific processes in which they process orders or manage their inventory. And all of those aspects of the system are really strong. And then as it relates to how you have different front end procedures or ways of interacting with the website, it once again lends itself to being carved in your image. So for any business that is really specific in their use cases, and especially also B2B, it's great. I would say that I still find it being a joy to work with for those use cases because it allows them to expand their multi-store functionality or be very be very nimble or agile in how they adapt the system to their needs versus in a lot of other cases, you're adapting to the limitations of that system. And I would say that's where Magento is so strong. So granted, that's not for as many DTC or small startups because they're focused on marketing growth challenges and aren't so focused on having everything be their way. But for more mature, medium-sized and bigger businesses, I find that it's a great sweet spot if they know how to work it into their routines and set their expectations accordingly. So I see it being really strong when you know what you need to do with your e-commerce platform, aside from marketing and growth.
Yeah, for years and years, I used to say, Magento isn't the do-it-yourself platform. It's not the no frills or no maintenance platform, but it's the platform of yes.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so that was always the way that I described it. This is the platform that if you need this integrated, if you need this custom workflow, if you need, whether it's on the user side or the back end, for operations,
Exactly.
It can be done. There might be a price tag to go along with that, like any custom work and any custom shop of any kind, whether it's for physical goods or for service industry work. But you can get across the finish line. You're not going to get stuck in the mud in quite the same way as a platform that you don't have that level of access to. So it's interesting that, I think that we've seen some of that movement a little farther upscale, where, some of those startups and SMBs that maybe when you and I got into this, that would have aligned now have those other options to look at. But for a lot of those more established businesses, it's very hard to give up that kind of that kind of customization, that ability to have that manifest destiny.
And I also wanted to add that I think a lot of people, if they see it as a competitive advantage, that freedom can really help you stand out in your industry because it allows you to innovate and do more with your processes, and you can insert more efficiency or do something to outpace your competition. Whereas if everyone's playing on the same set of rails, you don't have those opportunities. So I think that's what's really cool about the platform.
Yeah. And I know that you'd recently posted, an article kind of describing why you still, were so happy with working with Magento. And I'll make sure that we share a link to it in the show notes. But
nice,
that I could tell before bringing you on here that you have that passion for what you do with it and what it allows you to achieve. And I think it's interesting for someone that's really that's experienced with a lot of other platforms, getting that kind of insider look versus, you do find a lot of agencies that really work with one platform. And so they don't have that same breadth of experience. Now, I know, project to project, these are going to be completely different, but thinking back to what I said earlier about table stakes, what's a minimum project size on Magento? Not thinking dollars so much as hours, because, I can go to Shopify or BigCommerce and launch a site without changing any code pretty quickly and easily. That they're great for that. That's what these platforms. The same with Squarespace and and all the other I don't know Wix or Weebly or whatever's operating out there in the wild. What is it like to try to launch a Magento 2 site today? Would you say it's at least 100 hours or?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would say that like you should plan at least, like if you're in a real pinch, you can do it in a week or two. If you were in a pinch and you had a crunch time, it's not impossible. Fortunately, because of managed hosts like JetRails and other partners where it's like you can centralize your assets quickly if your whole e-commerce team is ready to go. There's nothing really stopping you if you know how to push the buttons. Where you maybe run into bottlenecks is if you're building out a really customized front end, or you have to add complex feature sets which match those business requirements. So I would say, a minimum 100 hours, minimum more. I would say, you want to budget yourself 3 to 6 months to do a really good job. But at the same time, that's usually because teams are figuring out their requirements as they go along, and they're not handing you a binder of requirements on day one saying, here you go, here's everything. So I would say, it gives you the ability to do that, where you can all the setups and all these things and can be templated and reproducible, especially if you have your catalog data and how you're going to merchandise it and how you're going to set up your attributes. It's right there for the taking. And so you'd be surprised how much you can achieve with the focus. And there was actually that Mage Derby, which was like a hackathon a couple years ago, where teams could see how fast they could build a fully functioning Magento store in a short span. So that, to me, that just proves that it's about having your ducks in a row and knowing how to get there. And then you can match that to your business requirements. Once again, if you're doing a complex ERP integration or other stuff like that, you have to account for those bottlenecks. But, it's generally, reasonably speaking, I want to say minimum, give yourself 90 days would be a smart move, but it can be done sooner.
And in terms of minimum maintenance, would you say, that they need a certain amount of hours per month or per quarter or something like that, just to keep up with security patches and other basics to keep the site healthy?
Yeah. As we're seeing now, you want to have you want to try to account for the needs of your infrastructure and keeping your installation healthy. You want to account for regular deployments or feature releases, and you want to account for security patches. So it's generally recommended that you have the support of an agency or an in-house developer in order to best make use of the platform. The last thing you want to do is have a need and then not have anyone to fill it. And fortunately, there's a lot of flexible arrangements out there where people are being sold and told, oh, you're going to be fully dependent on a developer. But just remember, like any complex piece of machinery, you need to just know how to operate and maintain it, and also know what you need to maintain it. So fortunately, there's a large supply of those people, and you're not at the mercy of any one party if you know about how to manage your technology. So I would say once people get past the notions or get past, very certain types of thinking, it's not as scary as it may seem or as complex as it may seem, as long as you have that support ready to go.
And, in terms of the base needs of the platform today, if you were talking to somebody about that kind of maintenance, would you tell them, that you're probably going to need on average a minimum of 5 hours or 10 hours a month budgeted, and maybe you won't always use it? Or what are those table stakes for keeping the site healthy today? And understanding that some sites are much more complex, have a lot more extensions that might need to be tweaked and updated and things along the way to keep them, up to the latest, software versions and things. But if you were managing someone's expectations, sort of that risk analysis of,
sure,
look, if you're going to go on Magento, you better be ready for X in order to keep PCI compliant and keep it functioning well. What does that look like these days?
So I would say you want to have a minimum of 20 hours a month just at your disposal. You're not necessarily going to need them all, depending once again on how aggressive you are in adding new features or doing changes to the website. But it's the kind of thing where you want to have this at your disposal instead of an afterthought, because then that's how you'll stay current or stay aware and engaged, especially if as a function of that relationship, that's one of the conditions is, hey, keep me informed of what's changing, keep me informed of what my needs are. Because just because an extension has an update, you don't necessarily need to update it. It just means if you need to take advantage of a new feature, or especially if there's a security update, you're aware of it. So it's really all driven by the need of how you keep your platform updated and patched, and then what descends from that need. And also how aggressive you are in pursuing new features and pixels and implementations and those sort of things. Because at the end of the day, a business is a functioning, living, breathing organism. So it's not intended to be static. And the e-commerce platform is a key pillar of that business. So, you need to anticipate that instead of run from it.
Awesome. And I know that Adobe is seeing 2.4 as being, at least in their eyes, much more mature. They know that these major version upgrades do take extra work and do put extra pressure on merchants. And so they've been pushing off a Magento 2.5 and really iterating on 2.4 and keeping their roadmap scheduled around iterating on 2.4. And part of their goal right now, as opposed to adding a lot of new stuff, is actually they've listened to the community and they've been trying to slim down the core, take out a lot of the core bundled or vendor bundled extensions that had been included, other things that, for those that aren't using it, it's just excess code to manage. It's bloat.
Yep, extra overhead.
Yeah. And so how do you see that impacting both new builds and maintenance on an ongoing basis?
Sure. So I think that as you have a slimmed down core, it'll make it easier to maintain because you're going to be choosing what you want to add, and then it won't be as many extra things that can cause problems. So you're going to see a settling period as those things are removed. It may introduce new bugs, but I think fortunately now you won't have to go and disable those things and rely on third-party things to help eliminate those dependencies. And I think you're going to find that it will be a more lightweight, slimmer application, which will make it run faster and run smoother. So ultimately, I see it as a positive sign because it's not as if these extra packages won't be available or these vendor extensions won't be available if they continue to support the product. Many of them are essential parts of an functioning e-commerce site, but only if you're using them. Therefore, I would say the slimmed down approach is a good idea based especially on how the application is constructed with composer and dependencies and packages. You can just, choose your own adventure, so to speak, in that new world. And so I'm excited for that because it only means more flexibility.
Yeah, I know side by side, they've been talking about putting out fewer major updates per year, fewer, what I'll call quality updates, where, hey, security patches needed, that's a little different. But similarly, do you see that helping to free up some of those resources, to be able to better iterate the website, add more features, add more extensions, do other things? Do you think it'll have any significant impact? Or, is it more of a minimal thing?
I would say that it depends on the usefulness of those new features, right? So for example, they added page builder support, and I know we may talk about that, but page builder support is something that merchants would have to adopt. So it's not necessarily useful. Or, there's things like that where it's a new feature, but unless you build it into your workflow and people know about it, it's just going to sit there anyhow.
Yeah. So unless it's a new build with someone that intends to use it and knows of it and, and so on, you're not going to get much out of it. If you're already up and running, your content's not set up in page builder.
Exactly.
Having the features.
It's that, or it's whether it's something you've been asking for. But something I would like to address out of this is the sheer volume of closed PRs for bug fixes and other reported issues. I think that's a missed opportunity on Adobe's part when they had the community engineering initiative. Is anytime the community was vocal about an issue with the platform and it could be verified, if it could have been fixed and rolled in, that's where you start to see this massive impact from these more life, like quality of life releases. Because then a bug that, let's just say everyone encounters this bug when they first set it up, sure, it only costs them 20 minutes, but that's 20 minutes times thousands and millions of people, for example, or, people running into an issue when a certain set of conditions happens and it's a known issue. Eliminating that will go a long way for the stability and the perception of the platform. So I think that should never cease, and that should only increase because it just means that's where you get a more robust, stable product. It's not just on new features. It's eliminating any kind of challenges that people are running into, especially when they've been reported and documented and repeated.
Yeah, and I'll come back around to a couple of things that you mentioned, but as here I was talking about, fewer patches and updates. I know that there's a small patch that we're recording this on a Monday. It was released yesterday
Yep.
for a critical security vulnerability. They gave it a 9.8 out of 10. I know my friends at Sansec and others are talking about it. We've already put up a blog post on our site that I'll share in the show notes. But it looks obviously significant. It doesn't require the user to have the hacker to have admin credentials or any kind of authentication. That it's a really more of an open security hole that needs to be fixed. So a few lines of code to fix it. But how are you seeing this one from your vantage point? Luckily and I think Sansec said it well in some of their communications that we haven't seen one quite like this since 2015, since Shoplift. So this isn't something that we encounter very often, but just another day in paradise. Or
I would say that it's important for awareness to be raised first and foremost, because there's so many merchants in so many disparate areas of the planet, or at installations in various states. So there's a good chance people are having vulnerable installations, but they're not in a channel where they would know about it. So I would say people like Sansec and Mr. DeGroot need to keep raising awareness, and Adobe does as well. Even if it's painful to acknowledge, it's really important, because that's what happens. It's not so much what happens on day one. It's 6 months from now when statistics come out like, oh yeah, there's 30,000 sites probably infected in the wild, and it's caused this much credit card fraud, because then you get the FBI and other parties involved, and it comes down from the top, from like Visa and credit card associations. You start to see that's where the platform's reputation takes a hit. So it's kind of like firefighting. Like we need to be on the front lines of this fire, and anyone who has a merchant on 2.3 or 2.4 should really get ahead of this and patch, because you don't want to be part of that problem, because it's already going to be a bunch of stores that aren't aware of it that are going to suffer from this. So I would say it's more of a cause and effect. And so anything like this should be stamped out as quickly as possible, because it's not that much work to patch it. And it's more of an inconvenience to deal with the fallout later.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the nature of this, where, often for PCI compliance, patch within 30 days. And that's, as we've touched on in other episodes of our podcast, that may be a bit of a stretch based on, how security operates and hackers operate today. But, this is one of those where it's like patch immediately. It's much better than the aftermath. I'm expecting, I'm not hoping for it, but I'm expecting that we'll see an outsized fallout from this particular one because of the nature of it. And luckily we don't see these kinds of more critical security vulnerabilities often at all. But that's the nature of the beast. We'll be out there trying to, ring the bells and let the world know. But I'm with you that, it shouldn't have to make it to the Wall Street Journal or somewhere for people to know that there's something going on. I do miss, and, you mentioned the community engineering program. I do miss folks like Sherry, who was overseeing the Magento community forums and some of the other outreach through the community and newsletters and things, and Ben Marks and others that were often really good centralized sounding boards for these sorts of things. But I know that there are other people like Eric Irway and Chris Hedge and others that are sort of
holding the torch.
Yeah, taking the reins on some of those communications. I think everyone's got other responsibilities, so they're doing their best. But it seems like we're starting to come through a little bit of that post-acquisition transition, where some folks, after a couple of years, 2-3 years, they headed out. And that left a little bit of a gap, where some of these roles and some of these communications weren't exactly, they didn't exactly pass the torch perfectly. Let's put it.
Makes sense. Yeah. Or it's a settling period. And now it's like business as usual. People know what to do, but new people.
Yeah. Well, and maybe different processes, different systems. So, they haven't necessarily picked back up at the Magento community forums or other things in quite the same way. So I think it's also the community moving along with them and figuring out, well, where do we have to go for these notifications now? Or, where are the best places to
fortunately, there's still the broadcast system as well inside of each installation, where hopefully they're pushing out those alerts every time you log in to Magento. So at least you'll know about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, I know that these ecosystems have been evolving. A lot of agencies that used to work on only Magento now work on a variety of platforms, and vice versa. There's been a lot of diversification in the market. Um, as an ecosystem, who do you see as new entrants coming in? Have you seen new tech partners
Yep.
that you've been aligning with in the last year or two? New players in the space that you think really enhance the experience for Magento users? Because I know I've run
Yes.
into lots of new folks at all the different virtual and in-person events, and for some, I think some people miss out on some of that growth and liveliness in the community.
Sure. So I would say there's two new tech partners that come to mind immediately. Fast Checkout and Fast.co. They're doing some innovative things out there. They're a competitor of Bolt, I believe, in the one-click fast checkout space. And they're approaching Magento and trying to go after some bigger merchants. So I think that's always cool to see big, well-funded companies going after the space. And then also you have companies like PDQ, which are a new like logistics platform, whereas they're open to working with Magento merchants. And then, for example, there's a payments company that we work with that just submitted a module to the marketplace. And so it's great to always see that people see Magento as a source of merchants that can take advantage of the platform, whether it's in Asian markets or European markets or North American markets. It's still like a burgeoning ecosystem where well-funded companies see it as a strategic linchpin of their strategy, and therefore, that's one of the more reasons why we're so excited to support it, because it's not a static ecosystem; it's constantly evolving, and it always is exciting when someone who wasn't in the ecosystem wants to come play in the sandbox.
Yeah, and speaking of newer entrants and newer tech aligning with Magento, in your background, for those that are listening on the audio, you've got your logo, and I noticed that you've got the logo for Hoofa. And we
Yep.
have an episode that we've had that really dives deep into Hoofa, and I was taught to pronounce it properly
Hoofa.
by some of
Yep.
my European friends.
Yep.
But Luma came out with Magento 2 in 2015, scores really poorly on Core Web Vitals. That all my dev friends tell me that it's miserable to work with. You're debugging in three different places. It's an older, it's Knockout JS and an older coding stack. What, how are you seeing Hoofa? As what's its role as you're seeing it today? Do you see other, competing products really get similar attention, or just
Yeah.
your 30,000-foot view of where is
Sure.
Hoofa fitting into the Magento ecosystem today?
So what Hoofa did, and I always start by saying Hiva for the uninitiated, so they can know what I'm talking about, but it really is Hoofa.
HYVA. Yeah.
Yeah, because it looks like Hiva to the American palette, right? So what Hoofa did that was so important is it answered a challenge that there was no common answers for, which created a source of massive inspiration for developers who are getting beat up for years on trying to solve these challenges. Hey, now we have a tool in our toolkit. So guess what? Everyone rushed to support it. Us being an early adopter, we're right now, I believe, the only US partner, but hopefully there's more partners growing, but there's also a lot of suppliers in the US. And so, for example, where it's really big is that it provides an answer to that Google page speed challenge, which you're seeing really impacting websites of all platforms. And so what they did so well is they reinvigorated the Magento community that new solutions can be tackled. And even the other day I saw, and it's based on Alpine JS and Tailwind. And, without boring you with complex technical details, what it does is it removes those knockout JS requirements, require JS, jQuery, all the things that were really antiquated, that were poor architectural decisions that have cost Magento 2 a lot of respect in the development world. It's eliminated that, and it reduces the time to market of building front-end projects, which improves client satisfaction, developer satisfaction. And then now to answer your question about other things entering the market, just the other day I saw someone prototyping something they called Luma React. And guess what? They're just substituting the knockout or other problems with it with React, and they're able to achieve very high page speed scores. So if this is also inspiring a bunch of I'm not going to say copycat movements, but the point is showing, hey, you don't need to just do it this way. Guess what that does? It strengthens the Magento ecosystem. It flips common biases on their head, and it ignites a spark. So I would say, a huge thank you to Willem and Vinay for starting the Hoofa project, because that has done something that can maybe introduce a Magento 2 renaissance. And I think that's more important in the bigger scheme of things than any one product or any one theme or any one front end. It's about showing people that the platform is not done innovating, and you can really still do new things and solve real challenges such as your Google Lighthouse scores.
Well, and as it should have been all along, that and has been, the community is bringing a lot of the innovation to the table. I am in a Slack group that Hoofa operates, and there I'm looking at my screen, 1,651 members of that group. So, which is tremendous if you think about, these developers and people, really interacting and being involved. And I'm glad to see partners of ours like your team really, taking the reins and getting so involved here in North America. We know that it really, it's a a European company that really started its bigger rollout in the EU, and luckily, a lot of those folks, were able to act as the proof of concept, the pilot, and get it to the stranglehold that it's starting to take now. Where, why would you want to build with Luma today if you're working on a new project, or if you're stuck on speed and core web vitals and things? At some point, is it just time to replace the theme? The same way that I remember years and years ago having to replace themes because we needed something mobile responsive. Yep. And, I'm dating myself, but you
either hack it together or you have to start fresh. And that's one of the complex challenges, is because you're always in this in-between space, matching where a brand is at to where the product is at, and then having to fill in the gaps. And that's where your agencies and experts come in.
Yeah. And, I know that the folks behind Hoofa, you mentioned Willem and Vinay, that they were part of an initiative called the Magento Open Source Community Alliance, MOSCA for short. And, it's a community-led initiative to make sure that, especially for the SMB community, for, young developers getting involved, that sort of thing, that there's a strong product here. And for the community in general, that there's a strong product for the foreseeable future, above and beyond anything that Adobe is doing, because Adobe has certain corporate needs and goals that aren't always as visible. Now, I know since that, the Magento Association sat their open source task force, and which Willem and Vinay sit on, and have had good things to say. And there seems to be a lot more communication that Adobe has been releasing an open source roadmap, and really trying to, because I think it was a communication issue, where, at the heart of it doesn't mean that
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Doesn't mean that there weren't other, real issues, and I'll bring up a couple yet, but, but I think that was at least at the heart of, it wasn't what Adobe was doing. It was the lack of knowledge of what Adobe was going to do. And so at least there's a real concerted effort on Adobe's part to help address that. But, and I'll ask for some general thoughts around MOSCA, but at the highest level, if they came out with a distribution or a fork of Magento 2, and I know they've already done a lot of work on that to be able to technically keep up with that, would you support it? Do you see that as sort of something important in the community right now, to kind of have that additional effort or that backup option?
So I need to go back in something you said, because you said a lot, and we need to unpack that. So first and foremost, you got to look at relationships, right? Adobe being the parent company that owns Magento software, and a relationship, like any interpersonal or human to human or organization to human relationship, it's about communication. So just like in your personal relationships, or in our personal relationships with friends, family, and significant others, that same thing can happen, right? Where you're not addressing someone's needs and they don't know it, and then it comes to a head in a volcanic eruption of emotions before you can deal with it, and then it's your reaction to that determines the future of that relationship. And so just in this case, I would say, once again, because Willem took such a strong stand and Vinay took such a strong stand, and all the people that signed the letter, there was a letter like, Martin Luther's thesis that was like the Protestantism movement of Magento that woke Adobe up because they were sitting in their high castle, not caring or seeming
let's
like
sell
they
some
didn't
Adobe
care.
Commerce licenses and let's not worry about anybody else.
They're in their high castle.
Outwardly.
Meanwhile, the peasants on the ground are suffering. There's a plague going on, a plague of SaaS taking the ecosystem by storm. And so, I really have to say that they were woken up by this. And now what we're living in is because there was just something last Friday, the Dev Exchange, where new initiatives were announced. And you do have to thank people like Chris Hedges and Eric Irway because they also are responsible for key aspects of the product and these relationships. And all of a sudden, from the top down, I believe there's been an epiphany at Adobe to work with the community. And then now people from the mosque are more satisfied, it would seem. And therefore, what you're having now is Adobe announced the STS and the LTS versions and all these changes that are coming that really preclude the need to fork the product if they have to. And so I would say I support a forking because that's the point of open source software. Just like we've seen with Magento 1, there's still merchants running it. And there's great organizations, too, to be exact, that are supporting long-term compliance.
Yeah,
and
we're
it's
partnered
fully
with
secure.
OpenMage and Mage 1, absolutely.
Exactly, OpenMage and Mage 1. And the point is, if it wasn't for some of the more bullying aspects of the payments industry, they would be even more successful because there could be compliant based on all the qualifications. And so my point is that it's more important, this reaction, than whether you need a fork. But of course, we would support it because that's what freedom in open source is about being able to choose. And so I'm really excited for what's going to come out of this because just like the community spoke up, now there's more power in the hands of that relationship. And when two parties are working together, even better things can happen. So I'm excited for what this is going to do, especially given that the Magento Association in its current form may have outlived its purpose. And there's talk of a Magento Association 2.0. And I'm really excited to see what that looks like. Because once again, this is an example of democracy in action. I know you think of democracy, you think of government, but think about it. People voiced an opinion to a larger, more powerful organization, and they were heard using the power of Twitter and other avenues where, you have a disproportionate amount of power to call attention to something. And all of a sudden we're seeing change. And so to me, that's such an important example for anyone in any community that you actually can make a difference if you work together. And so got to commend the people of that Mosca Alliance for doing this, because look at what we are seeing now as a result is actual change and actual commitment to results.
Yeah. And
so I had a lot to say on that too.
Yeah, no, well, I lined you up for a lot there. So I appreciate you unpacking that and addressing it head on. You mentioned a couple of versions of Magento with some acronyms that were brought up from the Dev Exchange. And I know if we don't tell people what those are, I'm going to get some write-ins. So could you spend a few seconds talking about those upcoming versions and what Adobe's...
I may butcher it, but STS means short-term support, right? And LTS is long-term support. And it has to do with which features. So this goes back to your earlier question about a leaner, slimmer core and debundling some of the core architectural changes like Elasticsearch, like multi-source inventory and MSI, and making sure that people have a choice and a freedom of what they use. And especially this goes back to Hoofa and the Luma front end being a core part of it, and when Luma is getting deprecated, and what is your option for having a business in a box? Because that's the other thing of why the front end architecture is so important for Magento, is you need to be able to install a store, have a running front end, customize it a little bit, but have it work. But if that goes away, all of a sudden you must build headless or must find other alternatives, and that will really discard or disadvantage a certain subset of merchants. And that's where the SaaS platforms are doing such a great job, because, hey, you start a business, you can go buy a theme, the themes work, they're not buggy, or, whatever it is, they come from a more verified source than if you bought like a theme off Theme Forest, for example. You're in for a world of hurt. And these Swiss Army knife try to do it all themes. No shame on them for trying.
Stuff. Yeah, that they just...
No shame on them for trying, but they really actually are a mistake. And hence the enlightenment part of Maier. We do not advise you to buy one of these do-it-all themes from Theme Forest, and God bless their creators. But, that's the point, is you need a credible, out-of-the-box, working front end, because at the end of the day, that's what users are interacting with. Your customers are adding to cart. And so back to STS and LTS, once again, it's committed forks from the top. that allow for more flexibility in how you use the product.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I know we're going to be hearing a lot more about that stuff upcoming. There's a lot of other things that Adobe is testing and rolling out. A lot of SaaS products, a lot of things that'll be available through the Magento marketplace to open source users and to Adobe Commerce users. They've got their Magento payments. They've got things that relate to store fulfillment that they've been doing in partnership with Walmart. Their express checkout with Bolt, which I'm excited for.
Yep.
It looks real cool.
Shout outs to Bolt.
Yeah, it's they've got all these different things happening. There that I think that a lot of merchants will be surprised when they see how much lands. And I'm expecting a lot of it will probably come out. With 2.4.4 and 2.4.5 even, that some of these things, I don't know that they'll be out of beta that quickly. But we'll see. And, some of them, they just may release whenever because it's in the marketplace. It's SaaS. It doesn't, it's not dependent on a version update.
Exactly.
So I think that we may see a little more activity there with, some vibrancy of capabilities and things that you can just, it becomes more modular. You can choose to add as you see fit. As long as the core is strong, then that all works well. Now, I know that there are some dependencies that are in Magento 2 that weren't in Magento 1 that do make it, a bigger platform, a little harder to get started with and to maintain. Things like Elasticsearch that are now part of the stack. Do you have any feeling for the complexity of Magento 2 as it stands now? Thinking about, and I know that even for the Mosca folks, that was something that they talked about through their communications, including at different live events. Trying to make it an easier platform for SMBs that really needed the flexibility, including B2B and other more unique use cases. Versus just for the more, for the larger businesses.
Sure. So I would say that comes from who's running the product and how it was being architected along the versions, because I think it's great that you have some of these more, different sectors of the community asking for different things. And so, for example, the ability to not be dependent on Elasticsearch and be simply dependent on MySQL as well. It's part of the roots of the product and simplicity, because not every business needs to have such complex technical requirements. Once again, I think when you worked with managed hosting, you really reduce your dependency on worrying about managed hosts. If they're worth their salt, like JetRails is going to address those dependencies head on. And then you won't have to worry about it because it's just going to be one more Kubernetes pod running in your cluster or on your dedicated server, one more service that's running. And so it's not something that is too much concern to me. But then again, when you're dealing with different types of infrastructure and different types of DIY scenarios, it is a serious dependency and it can cause people a lot of grief. Granted, I think Elasticsearch technology is really interesting and adds performance, reduces other performance bottlenecks, and you can really index and archive a lot of records in a fast way, but not everyone needs that. And I think, once again, having options to reduce those dependencies is really smart. And one of the reasons why I really respect some of our more senior members of the Magento community and, in the European wing of the community for having different opinions on that. And I think it's really important that, it exists, because then it keeps the product healthier instead of going down one avenue and becoming only one flavor.
Yeah. And, I promised I'd talk about some issues that that the community has still been facing with Adobe, and it'll be interesting to see, if they leave all those dependencies, especially with these other forks and things, if exactly where some of those things go. Look, I'm interested to see they brought Page Builder down to Magento open source, where the community could really have at it and help iterate it, hopefully. I'm interested to see if they do that with some other Magento, Magento enterprise features, things that go back a ways to the old EE days, before it was Adobe Commerce.
Or things that were in M1 and then that weren't in M2 or were changed how they work.
Yeah, or just they're there, but they're stagnant. They're not really
Exactly.
part of the sales pitch for Adobe Commerce. They're not part of the big value prop, and no one's paying them any attention. No one's evolving them. And I think some of those features might be nice to see pulled into open source where they can evolve and they can bring more value to the community. But, slimming the core, adding things, there's, I suppose that there are different goals in mind. But I think even, now I wouldn't want to take away from my friends that sell extensions to do some of these things. But imagine, you go to, let's say, BigCommerce, and gift cards are an included feature for users. You come to Magento and it's only included for Adobe Commerce. I've used the phrase table stakes a few too many times in this particular episode, but sometimes, and I think that's why one of the reasons that they brought Page Builder to open source was that it was becoming more of a necessity. What else becomes more of a necessity and not really a luxury anymore, and not something that's impacting the sale one way or the other for the Adobe Commerce product. So I think it's interesting. But to come back to an issue that I know I've been tracking with the Adobe team, sometime last year, as best as I understand, there was a program where Adobe, for years and years, was giving dev licenses to extension developers so that they could test extensions against Adobe Commerce. So let's say, you're a small dev team and you created something cool that brings value to the, Magento open source community, but could also be used by the Adobe Commerce community. It's one community, but two different user bases, right? Could you potentially, just make sure it works and push it out there? They stopped renewing those licenses last year, and everyone that I brought it up to at Adobe was surprised. No one was aware. No one knew who made the decision. That it felt last year a little bit discombobulated, because look, why wouldn't the Adobe Commerce team want Adobe Commerce users to get access to as many extensions as possible?
Exactly.
And why wouldn't Adobe want developers to be able to get access to that extra, even though it's a small sliver of the overall Magento market, why not make them, those users available to the devs? I know at JetRails, we have a few extensions, one in the Magento marketplace that's very popular for allowing users to manage Cloudflare through their Magento admin. Mm-hmm. It's got some great features. It's highly used. We give it away for free. There's no kickback from Cloudflare. There's no kickback from Adobe. It's just it's open source. We make it available to everyone. So, it's the kind of thing where we were, enjoying having that testing capability. We're now into February, and so this has been going on for months and months, and we haven't been able to get any change instituted. It's been brought up through the, from last year to the new open source task force for the Magento Association, and so on and so forth. Do you think that this is the year where we sort of get our feet back under us with Adobe in communications, in sort of that shared mission in open source? Or do you think that, we're all still trying to feel our way through it?
Well, I would say this is an example of the extension developers not having it together like the Mosca type folks, right? Even though the Mosca folks include some extension developers, I would say there's an example of a lack of vocal awareness of these problems, because then maybe they would have got the attention of Adobe and reversed that. So I think now that the avenues are open and they're listening more, now is the time for those parties to really speak up, because at the end of the day, it is doing a disservice, because then it may be less lucrative for an extension developer to support those merchants, which overall hurts the ecosystem, because Adobe isn't making competing products for everything, and all those features aren't in the core. So if you want a more robust, healthy ecosystem, you need to support the extension developers. One more thing that you brought up that you didn't bring up, but that this brings up to me, is the whole move to turn into subscriptions. And now it's all of a sudden become more expensive to operate a Magento store. Like Amnesty, $300 for the first year, now 40% discount on the second year. So you're paying forever. They're like, hey, let's be greedy like the Shopify marketplace. We don't want to provide value anymore. I'm pretty shocked. I mean, the cost is similar, but it's just the way it's presented. It's like you're open source, but you don't own anything in your store. kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth, because it's like, are they putting kill switches in their extensions now? And so once again, the community needs to speak up and push back about that, because what you have is a concentration of power in the hands of too few, just like Adobe has too much power. And so you got to be, awareness of that, because all of a sudden on the merchant side, as an agency, we're recommending, hey, you need to buy these 10 extensions when you build your store. All of a sudden, that's a multi-$1,000 decision. And then next year, you're going to be paying for it. And then previously, we're like, no, don't worry. You're paying once. Hey, if you need updates, you got to pay for the support. But it's a very clear model. Now it's like you're on the hook forever. So you have to start talking about your stores as a 3-year decision, a 2-year decision, a 1-year decision. It's like you're going to be forecasting out costs differently, which once again makes the conversation more mature. But the way we talk about extensions has to change. And so, tying that to what Adobe's doing, people just need to be more vocal, because I think ultimately it's a good thing if extension developers can support Adobe Commerce. And that's what's really important here.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that for a lot of these extension developers, and that seems to be the expectation of the Adobe team for the moment, is that you don't have to keep the subscription in order to keep using the module, that it's not actually SaaS, that's basically they wanted it to be more feasible to go through the Magento marketplace, buy the extension, and keep getting the support, and not have that run out, so that you'd get version updates and other iteration. And, and if you were keeping the site for 10 years, which I know a lot of people on Magento One that have certainly managed that, that it's not completely stagnant, and that you don't lose that relationship with the extension developers, and that the extension developers aren't expected to iterate, et cetera, and keep something going with no money flowing toward it. However, that you would still have the code, and ideally, from what I was told, that you'd still get access to security patches and such, although I imagine that'll probably come down to extension developer by extension developer.
Yes, of course.
So if you have the code and you get your security patches, I still feel good about it. I see where Adobe wanted to get at that, so because otherwise everyone was just going to, whether it was Amnesty or Headworks or MageWorks or this one or that one, and going to a different website to sign up for the ongoing subscription or to renew a subscription after they bought the extension. So Adobe wasn't getting their cut.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, see, it's a money play. So they basically,
like the Apple App Store, Epic Games, Google Play Store conversation. But once again, if you're having that conversation, it means you have a healthy ecosystem that isn't being siphoned to Shopify or BigCommerce, right? So we want that conversation to happen, because it means there's enough business for people to care.
Yeah, look, and if I've gotten anything wrong there, we will set the record straight in the near future. But to the best of my knowledge, some of this will come down to how the developers want to sell their product. And I do know that for a lot of the developers, that they've maintained too many extensions at a loss. They've lost, that these are the winners.
And now they're trying to come back.
Yeah,
exactly.
Now they're trying to how do they make this? And look, we saw companies like, we watched web shop apps. Karen Baker's company,
evolved
into Shipper HQ, which is SaaS, and we've seen others, that have gone pure SaaS on it. Where it's not just an optional subscription or anything. So I'm hoping that what we see is the hybrid model here, where there's a subscription available, there are benefits that go with that subscription. Why wouldn't you want to be getting new features and other support from the company? If you run into a problem down the road, you're going to wind up signing up for it anyway.
I think they should make it where you get a license to like buy a lot of extensions and pay a fee. Like instead of, if you're buying one extension from Amnesty, you find a way to make it more cost effective to use 17 of them, which then concentrates the support, because
they do some of that.
It's too expensive.
Pretty sure that they've got some bundles there, at least, to some extent. Yeah.
But you get my point. Overall, you're right. We didn't look at I wasn't taking into account the fact that extension developers have also been burned by all the things that have happened out there, because you're not just supporting one version, right? You're supporting 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, all the different sub versions of those platforms, all the different customized variations, and merchants breaking things and developers breaking things. And so, at any given moment, you're probably supporting 20 something flavors of Magento at once, not just one thing. If you're a Shopify extension developer, or Shopify app store maker, you're just, supporting that platform. You're not worrying about so many different versions being in the wild.
But I think that this comes back to a linchpin. communication. So what you believe to be true and what I believe to be true about the exact same evolution of the Magento marketplace didn't align. And and we still, want to. I think the jury's still out a little bit. It's probably the truth is probably somewhere in between.
It's not settled. Yeah, I don't think, and you probably might know more than me because you're tapped in. But I'm just saying it's not exactly a settled thing because there's the reactions maybe haven't happened yet.
Yeah. Well, that it's nice when you make a big announcement, but when you actually start to charge people a certain way or
they react,
or institute change, people don't always come up in arms about rhetoric, about some new marketing campaign or something. It's not impacting them in the moment. It's when they feel it. Well, I mean, like you said, extension developers and losing access to Adobe Commerce licenses. I mean, if you're an Adobe partner spending $10K or more on a partnership, then you get access to certain things, but that's not the average extension developer. I should probably go back to my friends at EXTDN at the Extension Developer Network and tell them
and see what they think. That would be a good episode.
Yeah. So that's that onto itself. I think is just you're right that there is sort of a sub ecosystem, a sub community just of the extension developers.
And once again, I'm not in their business, but I would say that I think it's not too cost prohibitive if you're going to gain access to an entire supported ecosystem to pay that fee. But there should be more clear stipulations that come with it and a benefit that you're going to be pushed to certain merchants and not be locked out, because then it really is a losing proposition.
Yeah, well, and I think for folks
the business back for spending
like an Amnesty or a Headworks that are really turning a good profit on extensions, that may not be an issue. I would see it as more the issue of the dev or small dev team that's created something really cool, and why shouldn't it's open source. That's the whole point. Why shouldn't the community get access to it? Think about how if you're selling these at $100 a pop, let alone giving it away for free, how many would you need to sell to Adobe Commerce users to turn a profit on it? Well, it's not going to happen. Unless you have the best thing since sliced bread that everyone needs and no one has.
But the price has always been higher. But also, they've always overcharged for commerce extensions, even if there's literally no difference, right? Like you've had to pay 3 times as much just because you have that software, not because it works differently in that version. So
it's funny. I've tackled
there was a lot of largesse, fat of the land on that end too.
A long time ago, I tackled that with either Amnesty or a Headworks on this podcast. And why is it more? And what I've always been told by the extension developers is those users expect more immediate support. So there's almost a higher threshold there, which is what I've found with agencies also. True. That the minimum project build for Adobe Commerce or Magento Enterprise back in the day was always elevated in a variety of ways. And, because there were certain needs and expectations, there are more modules that you have to test against, things like that. But
there's more at stake,
potential conflicts. Yeah, but there's more at stake, and there's others. So you start to bring all those things together. That you've got to dedicate time, both in in functionality and all, and bug fixing and other things, because there's more modules and things in Adobe Commerce, and that the support expectations are real high. And so there's a variety of things like that seem to add up. And you're going to sell a relatively small number of them compared to Magento open source. So True. You kind of balance all that out. And it does come off as a tax. But I think it's the same tax that the merchant feels from an agency as soon as they say that they're on Adobe Commerce. To me, it feels like you walked into a vendor and said, "Oh, this is for my wedding." Yeah, all of a sudden the price just tripled on the DJ, the florist, the whatever it is, the caterer. They hear wedding, and that's the one day. If you don't do everything right for them, they will chase you to the ends of the earth. You have to have backup plans, contingency plans. That there's no messing that up.
It's true. And like you said, it's expectations. It's not just it's not like discrimination. It is expectations. That's true. That makes sense.
I've written about any number of times and spoken about the differences between Magento open source and Adobe Commerce. And I just published a new article on it very recently. And that is one of the things that I like to in many of the pieces at least bring up, that you have to account for those sorts of things in the total cost of ownership when you're comparing the two, that there are some upcharges and other things that you might not realize. I brought up the Magento Association at least a few times. I know that one of the challenges with the association is it's a new nonprofit with a limited budget, limited staff. And so everyone wants it to be a lot of things. And I think back to our theme of managing expectations, that they've had a very hard time meeting the community where the community is wanted to be met.
Not that inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, I know most of the emails that I see from the Magento Association
Just advertisements.
Yeah, they're advertisements for sponsors, and they need the sponsor money. So, I don't know how else they show the sponsors value. So I get it.
Yeah, but most nonprofits publish where they're spending their money. I don't think this one does. So I think that's a shame that it's not as transparent as it could be.
That's interesting. I think the books are public, or at least are available to the public. But I think you'd have to ask to see them. I don't think that they are published.
Yeah, I don't think they've made it. Yeah, and that's a big loss, because when you have such a robust community, you could really gain more sponsors if you showed where your dollars are being used. Just like nobody likes to donate to charities that are spending it mostly on administrative costs. They want to see it making real world impact.
Yeah, there's nonprofit websites like, I want to say, Charity Navigator and other things, where I like to look up before I
I did the same thing.
Not that I'm trying to hold anything hostage, but trying to what am I getting involved in here? Is any of this money actually going to go where I think it's going to go?
Especially on a bigger scale, exactly, when it's a bigger charity.
Yeah, no, really, it's interesting. And sometimes, look, organizations need some level of administration. There's going to be some costs. So with the Magento Association, my knowledge of it is that a lot of the budget goes to a company called Smith Buckland that helps with the overall organization. And keeping them functioning and operating at a base level, but they don't have the same technical teams, and a lot of the other things are being done by volunteers from the board, from different committees and task forces and whatever they've spun up. But those people have full-time jobs. Those are people like you and me. I know I've applied to do a variety of things. I've applied to write content. I've applied to, I try to find ways to help.
And were you accepted, or what happened?
So far, they haven't taken me up on anything I've offered to that I can think of.
Such a shame.
Well, yes and no. Like, I had, when they were first, forming the first board, coming out of sort of their, the folks, the board that came together to sort of, dream it up. I had applied, but they wound up with a really strong board from all over the globe, and I didn't feel bad about that.
No, of course.
And there was the task force that I applied to, the open source task force. And again, they wound up with some really strong people that I think have done a great job, like Willem and Vinay and others, of voicing different concerns and, and sort of being a little bit of a barometer for, because that's it. You need people that are connected to enough other people to really,
the job of the task
back in. Yeah.
And the job of task force is to get things done, right? Not just talk. So I think that's true at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I don't know. I offered to write some content at some point, and even if maybe the topic or whatever that I recommended weren't a fit, nobody got back and said, "Oh, could you do this instead?" Or could you recommend, a lot of it.
And that leaves you, but doesn't that leave you feeling disheartened? Like, I applied for the task force, and no, I don't think I'm more qualified than anybody, but it's about being able to give good ideas or taking in different voices. And so, once again, I think that's discouraging. And you have such a powerful, supposedly well-funded organization, at least to a minimum. You could do more with it if it feels more inclusive. And that's my point. So
I've said to them right since they started, and I knew that they had a lot of applicants for the initial, board and all that, what are you doing with those people? So are you reaching back out to that list to get them to volunteer in other ways? And they did create committees, and they did do some other things. So they tried to open up more.
Yep. The committees are cool because also you can start more committees. It's not like there's a limit on the number of committees.
Yeah. So as long as there's a good purpose behind it, that it's worth the effort. Because again, then for the board and everybody else, it means longer meetings, more to oversee, more to approve. So as long as there's a good, they've got things that, look, a lot of what they're doing these days, it's about the Meet Magento events around the globe, and about, so they've got
there's much less. The pandemic probably hasn't helped.
Yeah. I think that's hard. Like, they had a deposit down on an event in Vegas that the deposit is still sitting there with the venue in Vegas. So they're hoping to come back around to in-person events here in the States, on behalf of the Magento Association, let alone those organizers in the community that are hosting things around the globe. And, right now, around now, seeing things about, Meet Magento India and Meet Magento Mexico. And I know that Sweden, I heard at the Dev Exchange, was being planned. And so I
That's
think
awesome.
is planned for later this year. And so we are seeing a lot of these things happen. And I've met in the last year, I've met interesting people, especially because so many of these went virtual, through events like, Meet Magento Singapore, that I would have never otherwise expected to participate with. But, so there has been some good movement. I think sometimes we're removed from some of it. If you're not, eh, again, because a lot of the communications are sales focused,
Just
are
mailing list,
sponsors.
blog by sponsor. And wait,
Yeah.
what's the podcast though?
Well, yeah. So I was mentioning to you earlier, there's this podcast that the Magento Association put out, and after all of this talk about inclusion with Magento open source and the open source community, they wrote up the podcast as being focused on Adobe Commerce, and my jaw dropped when I saw it.
Of
It was
course.
like, what a wasted
Missed
opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. What a miss.
Where everybody's trying to come around and have these kumbaya moments and get together, but it turned out to be a little bit more of a marketing thing than a community effort, which
it just proves the point.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I never mention what JetRails does on this podcast or anything like that, but
primary sponsor.
Well, owner, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's I'm on the clock right now, right?
Yeah.
I don't pull punches about that, but we've invited a tremendous number of people from the community on to talk about different things, as it relates to the community. And it really is an open forum in so many ways. And it's intended to be. And there are a lot of episodes where you could tune in and you'd have no idea what JetRails does, because that's not the nature of the podcast.
Yeah, you're building this richer background of content. And I would say that's where they're missing, right? Because think about it. Adobe doesn't use the Magento brand anymore. So why would you have a Magento Association podcast about Adobe Commerce? It should be called the Adobe Commerce Podcast. And if there's a Magento branded podcast, it should be about the community. Well, once again,
I'm gonna have to tune into more of their content and see how it actually.
Well, I'm just reacting because I just heard of it, but I'm just saying that's super tone deaf.
I had a hard time with the marketing around it. Just it felt tone deaf in the moment. But like everyone else, I think everybody's trying to figure out this way forward between Adobe, that spent a tremendous amount of money purchasing Magento, and is entitled to seek
my billions
return on investment.
Yeah. I think they've hit that ROI a bunch already. So let's, I don't feel too bad for them. And that's another point, actually, is the democratic or undemocratic nature of the association, which is what we're speaking to, right? Like, think about it. As capitalist business structures change to be more collective minded, or, the ownership is concentrated in the hands of the members, that's the problem with the Magento Association. The board members are basically ruling by fiat because they can only pass it to other people. It's a very self-enclosed ruling chamber. I read the bylaws recently and I was pretty shocked at how poor this is. There's no voting. There's no choice. Meaning I can't be a member of the Magento Association, even though I've been a contributing member of the community for 10 years. I have no power to influence this association. So what's the point of the association that claims to represent people if you can't even participate?
Yeah. Anyone can be a member. They're not charging dues yet because they
but the membership means nothing. Yeah, but it means nothing. There's no value to it.
Group, and you get these emails, and they do have the Magento Connect events, which I'm.
I spoke at the event. I had an awesome merchant focused panel, thanks to Thinlan Weber and Ignacio, who did the moderation. So of course, there's good things happening, but the attendance was extremely low for that event, right? There was very few eyeballs on the event.
The number of members is low, and the overall participation with a lot of these things is low. And
that's my point, is like there needs to be an evolution. Open the books, maybe reform the alliance, because apparently in the bylaws, the 5 board members can actually vote to cease it. So it needs to like have a phoenix moment and be rebuilt in this new movement. I don't know, man.
That's interesting. So how earlier on I was talking about 1,600 and some odd people in that Hoofa Slack group? Yeah. I want you to give a guess how many are in the Magento Association's group.
I looked at it recently, but it's like guessing the number of gumballs at the doctor's office in the jar, the jelly bean count. I'm going to say 257, sir.
471 is what I'm seeing in the general channel there. So,
which is not, and it's not that active. And also it's also not a paid Slack. So once again, anything good that happened a little while ago is gone. So there's no retention of anything.
Yeah. So I think we're hitting the nail on the head, where I think even for the board, and I know some of those board members, and I know that they have good intentions
They
and they're hard at
care.
work at it and they care
Yeah.
and so that's why I'm not, I'm not, just for the sake of it, trying to be maybe diplomatic, uh,
Yeah.
that I really do think that, and I really do believe from the information that I have firsthand that they are really, really trying. But it's difficult. I think that which I've seen with lots of nonprofits. I think that other associations, like with Drupal, they've got a different, a totally different budget, and they've been able to hire differently to be able
Oh,
to
the type
operate.
3 and the type 3 guy
Typo three,
too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
typo 3. But then that's my point, right? If you are, and this is directly a call out, because I think the people in the committees, God bless you, right? God bless your souls. You're doing great things and you're giving your time. But if you're on the actual board, I'm calling you out. You need to do better. You need to step your game up. You're not doing enough for the community. If you're on the board, you have a really important position. You're an arbiter of change. You should do better.
Well, I'm sure I'm going to get someone from the association coming on here
I hope so.
to defend their good name. Now, like I say,
I'm not
my
impugning their name. They just need to do better. You could be nothing, all personhood aside, but as an association, it's failing.
I think it's been tremendously challenging. And I think also because the way some of us have wanted to see it was like them taking over the Magento open source code base, and they don't have their feet under them for that yet.
But that's okay.
And I think that we'll see them get there. I think that there's now a lot more opportunity for that. But I think it's also an amount, a question of funding and other things. As a new nonprofit, they got a certain number of sponsors and things off the bat, and I think that they've stagnated with a lot of that, and it's difficult. And I've been president of a nonprofit before.
It's hard. I've started hard. One. It's hard. It's very difficult.
Yeah. So I'm giving those individual members a lot of benefit of the doubt because I'm not in the room for the board meetings and things. But I'm with you that I think that that expectations are a lot higher, and really, and I think that they are trying to figure out, and like with membership committees and other things, they're trying to figure out, okay, paid membership, what's included? How do we bring value?
Yep.
What are those next steps? So I don't want to say necessarily in their defense, but just eyes wide open that I do expect to see evolution.
Even $25 a year, right? Like something very minimal. People spend that going for a drink or buying lunch. Like, it's not, I'm not saying everyone has
and if you're making your living from Magento, then yeah, $25 a year is really not a big ask.
But it adds up when you multiply it by the thousands, right? That's 25,000 for 1,000 members, 10,000 members, 250, So my point is, it's like, not with a little, if you concentrate that, but it needs some higher minds to really step away from just the commerce banner and figure out what's good for everyone. And also, I don't necessarily agree that the Magento Association should own the repo. I think Adobe realized what they dropped the ball on, and now they're taking more responsibility, because you literally had thousands of pull requests get closed, hundreds of pull requests of people who put their time to fixing the product over the last 5 years. We could have had such a stronger e-commerce platform right now if those pull requests got merged. Yeah. All they had to do was merge the pull requests and put some money towards that, and you would have so much more market share because people wouldn't get discouraged. So it's not even about the association.
People put the code there.
Yeah. And people want the recognition. And so that's where I don't think the association needs to wear that mantle. What the association needs to do, in my opinion, is just further the advancement of awareness and adoption of the product and provide support and stewardship for it, right? Just like how there's organizations like Women Who Code or Girls Who Code, which are creating new people. Look at companies like Swift Otter, who he made his whole mission. Like for example, I had something called
on the podcast also. But I had something what they're doing there.
Exactly. I had something called Sponsor Dev, like let's just say 5-4 years ago, whatever it is, where I said, hey, Maier is going to sponsor Magento certifications for a few people with whatever little resources we have, or self-funded company. But then Swift Otter took that to the maximum, and he began to own the certification space so much that Adobe put him on the board of certifications and reformed the certification program. And so that's just an example where one individual with his power created a sea of change. Yet you have an association with hundreds of thousands in funding and a mandate to exist that can't even do anything close to that. And I think that's an indictment on their performance as a board and an association. And so just
Well,
using Swift Otter and Marcus Just and all the people putting out good content, yourself,
absolutely.
anyone who's actually out there inspiring people to use Magento, that's what the association should do, is make it you proud to be part of this community,
So
and not the opposite.
I'm going to flip this around, because I know that, you've got I picked up some serious passion around this.
I've got passion. It's unbridled.
Yeah. I love it. It is Valentine's Day that we're recording this on, so this makes sense. Now,
I love you, Magento.
Well, but that's kind of it. That, when we care, it shows. That if nobody cared, we wouldn't be
12
talking.
years. This is my 12th year working with the platform. So, or year 11 and a half, whatever it is. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears and time has gone into this for a lot of people.
If you could see the Magento Association do one or two or three things by the end of this year that they're not doing today, something specific, a program, an event, a channel, a something, what would it be that they could do that you think would really elevate it?
Okay, open the books is number one, and be more transparent as a nonprofit. Very easy to do, but it takes courage. Number two, paid membership. Recruit more members, so a whole membership drive, and don't be afraid to add more cooks to the kitchen in an organized way. And number three, do an awareness and marketing campaign so that more merchants and developers can be proud to use Magento. Help restore the good name of the platform. We don't need to be losing in an ecosystem like this. And remember, my company supports Shopify, and I'm have grown more in that regard, and BigCommerce too. And so I'm just saying, though, it shouldn't be an embarrassment, or people shouldn't hear Magento and turn their nose up at it, because you have this new generation of marketers, which literally savages and sabotages the reputation of Magento at every turn they have. They go to a merchant, you're on Magento, you're a joke. Why are you not moving to Shopify tomorrow? I can't believe you chose Magento. And that's pathetic. Magento has enabled so much billions of dollars of commerce for people that we shouldn't be in this position.
It's a fantastic product. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's my third thing, is restore the reputation, and let's take this thing to the top again, because it's good.
Fill the vacuum.
Yeah. Fill the vacuum with goodness, because it's out there. There's so many success stories.
Coming back.
So that was three. That was your three. Yeah.
So that was excellent. I know that they've got folks looking at the whole membership thing. And so I know that they're hard at work at it. I'm wondering if, in terms of getting the word out there, that if they really need to partner with a lot of the companies in the ecosystem, not just sponsors, but if they need some kind of, almost like a pledge drive, but not talking so much about money as, throwing free swag to people for signing up, or getting, some kind of, get some of the companies to sponsor some kind of awards, whatever it is,
that's a good idea. Independent Magento
gift card or whatever for the, picked out of at random kind of thing for every 100th person or something. That, I don't know, figure out how to get the extension development companies and the agencies and everybody else out there trying to get their, all the users involved, get the devs involved, how to actually bring those numbers up so that there are more voices and there is more, happening.
I would just say anything that reduces apathy, right? Because apathy is the enemy of change or goodness. I forgot the phrase, but reducing apathetic attitudes around Magento is very important, because you're seeing it melt away. And so I think that's where anything that creates excitement, anything that creates ability for people to pat themselves on the back, anything that takes a young developer, a 24-year-old who's getting started in development, and makes them want to work on Magento, that's really important, right? Or a merchant to say, hey, this is not a suicidal business decision to go on this platform, and assuaging those notions is really important for the long run, I would say.
Yeah. Well, look, so you and I were both at the same dev exchange last week, I guess, ships passing in the night, but
I was just busy doing work and I couldn't really fully attend it, but I want to know about this.
Well, that's the hard part about virtual, is that it doesn't always have your
you can't take a day off. Exactly. Yeah, that is the problem with virtual.
But, I would go as far as to say, based on the numbers of attendees that I was seeing, if, in the chat and what have you there, if the numbers being shown were accurate, there were more people at a Meet Magento New York for a regional live event. So I think that pandemic partially, we've missed out on things like Magento Imagine, where even if it wasn't going to be
I
Imagine, the
miss it.
Magento Association had every intent of having sort of a sub, gathering, things like that at
Yeah, we can't.
Adobe Summit, which has been scuttled and has been
Yep.
virtual and will be for.
I don't know if I got my
until-
money back for those tickets. I can't remember. Or I didn't buy them. I was about to buy them. But anyway, the point is like that's where we can't really you can't really comment on the fact that the pandemic has sidelined everyone's vision. So it's easy for me to sit here and call out the Magento Association, but that's coming from a position of the last 2 years of being we live in a changed world, right? It's not the same place as it was 2 years ago. Therefore, who knows what would have happened.
So I think my takeaway, for the audience here, is there are a lot of people like you that really, really, feel strongly about how important this product is to the e-commerce ecosystem. It's not a one size fits all, but it plays a huge role.
Yeah, it needs to
for
exist.
so many businesses. Yeah, and that that we care, and that we want to participate. We want to make sure that things are healthy for the foreseeable future, and then some. And so, and I felt a lot of that at the Dev Exchange last week, that the people that were there with purpose, even though I wished it was a larger group. That often happens with these virtual events. It's not like, booking your flights and all that, you hope you're going to do it and then other things hit your calendar. And virtual is tough. But it's fantastic. This has been a marathon of an episode. I haven't done one this long in quite a while. So I'm really appreciative of you sharing all your time
Thank you.
with us and the listeners and viewers. Any final thoughts before we wrap for today?
No, just saying, thanks for having me on. And this has been a really exciting, interesting conversation. And I think it's important that, stuff like this exists so that more awareness can be brought to what's going on in e-commerce and Magento. And because so much of it, is just day-to-day business stuff. So it's really great to have an opportunity to sit down and share thoughts on anything. And, just thanks for having me.
Well, it's much appreciated. And as always, to our audience, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, stay healthy, and happy selling out there.